Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. It's Sunday. That means one thing. That's right. You're here for the weekly recap of all the top stories from the week of September 15th of 2025. All the top stories located in one convenient location. I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy your day. And remember, the Constitution matters.
All right, lawyer.
Bryan Kohberger. That's right. The video investigation continues. So 1 month following the online publication of videos depicting Bryan Kohberger in his Idaho prison cell, the origin of the leak has been, not identified. Now, this incident directly contravenes policies established by the Idaho Department of Corrections, where obviously Kohberger is incarcerated and will be for his next 4 consecutive life sentences. Now, in August, prison authorities committed to conducting an inquiry among correctional personnel at the Idaho Maximum Security Institution to identify those who might be responsible. And, those Idaho officials characterized the leak as an explicit breach of Idaho Department of Correction protocols with potential consequences, including termination of employment or criminal charges for the perpetrator. Anyway, in a statement issued last month, the Department of Corrections emphasized that recording and disseminating security footage constitutes forbidden behavior, and all available legal measures, including prosecution, will be evaluated. The statement further affirmed that the safeguards and the well-being of the staff and the inmates is the agency's foremost concern. Now, initially, the Department of Corrections raised the possibility that the footage could have been fabricated or produced using artificial intelligence. However, internal communications from the Department of Corrections and staff acquired through some various public records requests expressed confidence in its authenticity, noting it appeared to originate from within the correctional facility and underscores the gravity of the situation. And yesterday, the representatives confirmed that the video was verified as genuine, though no individual has been implicated. Their spokesperson stated that despite the circulation of altered or AI-modified variants, the original material is authentic and it violates their guidelines. The inquiry will continue as a key focus, they said. And, we'll see how that turns out, right? Anyway, the Idaho State Correctional Institutions, which is located near Kuna, Idaho, encompasses the state's maximum security facility, housing Mr. Bryan Kohberger, who is obviously serving those 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for those November 22 homicides. Now, although the Idaho State Police typically manage prison-related investigations, the Department of Corrections is overseeing this matter internally as confirmed by the Idaho State Police. Earlier this month, a spokesperson by the name of Blake Lopez indicated that the probe remains active with no new developments. Just a quick background. Obviously, Kohberger pled guilty in July to the 4 counts of first-degree murder under the plea agreement that spared him from ultimately receiving the death penalty. He received those consecutive life sentences without any eligibility for parole or any type of an appeal. And following Kohberger's July 23rd sentencing at the Ada County Courthouse there in Boise, Kohberger was relocated from the county jail to the maximum security prison. Now, records do indicate he was initially placed in the medical unit before transfer to solitary confinement in the J block some 6 days later. And then, being Bryan Kohberger on August 14th and his attorneys, they contacted prison officials regarding 2 brief video segments posted on Reddit, which appeared to show her client. In letters obtained through public records requests, Taylor's noted that the footage seemed to be captured by a guard from security cameras monitoring Kohberger's cell, expressing apprehension about his security. Anyway, Kohberger's legal team has refrained from granting interviews since the removal of the gag order in mid-July, invoking professional and legal duties to their client. Now, prison documents reveal that during his initial months in prison, Kohberger reported instances of mistreatment, including threats of sexual assault from fellow inmates. And as of Wednesday, he continues to be housed in the same prison section where these events occurred. Now, I just can't imagine that this would be that hard to figure out. We're talking a maximum security prison. You know who was working during a particular time period. You probably know who has access to those particular cameras. You think they would be able to figure something like this out. Apparently not. Apparently it is very, very complicated, and there's no way that they can figure this out. Or they know who did it, and they're like, well, he's a good guy, whatever. We'll just let it go, and hopefully it'll die and go away. And it probably will, and no one will ever care about it again. But do you also remember the court was very outraged and upset that there were leaks, allegedly from the prosecution, maybe the police, about information that was turned over to various news agencies. And there was going to be a big brouhaha. People were going to be prosecuted, and things were very serious. And this goes directly against the court's orders. Nothing. No comment whatsoever. And I'm not trying to cast dispersions on the police or the people investigating the case, but this is normally what happens when the government, believes that, well, although there was some misconduct, we don't really want to charge anybody because we like the people that did it, right? So they just kind of let it fade away, and they hope that nobody ever notices that nothing is ever done about it. And like I said, I'm not looking to get somebody in trouble, but once again, you mean to tell me you can't figure out who sent the information to the news? You can't figure out who videotaped the cameras of Bryan Kohberger in his cell? I just find that hard to believe. How many people could possibly have had access to those particular cameras? Well, probably people working in that particular cell block, right? Interview everybody. Just seems a little odd to me. Anyway, let's move on. Next on the docket, Luigi Mangione has a big day in court. That's right. The court dismisses the terrorism charges against Luigi Mangione. So a significant development occurred in the state murder case against Luigi Mangione, the 27-year-old Ivy League educated man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on December 4th of last year. Now, in a ruling issued by Manhattan Supreme Court Judge Gregory Caro, C-A-R-R-O, the top charges of murder in the first degree as an act of terrorism and murder in the second degree as a crime of terrorism were dismissed, citing insufficient evidence of terroristic intent. Now, this decision represents a substantial setback for the district attorney's office there in Manhattan. And for those who aren't familiar with the case, Luigi Mangione is alleged to have fatally shot Brian Thompson, a 50-year-old father of two, outside the Hilton Hotel in Midtown Manhattan during his United Healthcare Investors Conference. He was obviously the CEO, so he was going to be there talking to the investors, the shareholders. Prosecutions claimed that Mangione engraved the words "deny, depose, and delay" on the bullet casings reflect his frustration with the healthcare system, reportedly stemming from personal health issues. Now, the prosecution presented evidence of a premeditated and calculated execution, but the judge ruled that this did not meet the threshold for terrorism-related charges. Now, Mangione still faces one count of murder in the second degree, which carries a sentence of 25 years to life, with the possibility of parole, as well as multiple weapon possession charges and one count of possession of a forged instrument. So during this brief 15-minute hearing today, Mangione appeared in the Manhattan Supreme Court wearing a tan prison jumpsuit and maroon shirt with his hands and legs shackled. The dismissal of the terrorism charges was met with visible relief among his supporters in the courtroom, some of whom were seen smiling or wiping away tears. Now, Mangione's defense teams argue that the prosecution had rushed to bring the case, a claim bolstered by the judge's ruling that the evidence was legally insufficient to support the terrorism charge. Well, what does this mean? Well, Mangione still faces separate federal charges, including murder through the use of firearms offenses, and 2 counts of stalking, which allege the killing was committed in furtherance of terrorism. These charges make him eligible for the death penalty, and the Attorney General Pam Bondi has indicated her intent to pursue execution if Mangione is convicted. Now, the federal prosecutors have warned that Mangione's actions may inspire others to use violence for ideological or political purposes, noting a growing public sentiment in some circles that view such acts as acceptable. Anyway, Mangione has garnered some significant public attention, with supporters raising over $1.2 million for his legal defense fund. Many, particularly younger individuals, view him as a symbol of resistance against perceived corruption in the healthcare industry. I'm sure the CEO's family would disagree with that. Anyway, supporters gathered outside the courthouse, some wearing T-shirts and masks in tribute of Mangione, and others holding signs referencing the Super Mario Brothers character, Luigi. Anyway, Elena Boyer, a supporter, stated that healthcare is a human right, emphasizing Mangione's symbolic role, though she clarified she does not condone murder. Well, maybe a little bit, okay? And I understand you may feel a particular way, but if you go back and read the Constitution, nowhere did I see that the Founding Fathers put in there that healthcare is a fundamental human right. Additionally, nobody has passed an amendment to the Constitution saying that you're entitled to free healthcare. Nowhere. I can't imagine the Founding Fathers thought that. I'm assuming they probably paid their doctor, or the doctor did it for free. But we don't have doctors doing it for free now, do we? I guess not. Anyway, supporters can believe what they want, but the reality of it is, as a defense attorney, you got a pretty tough case to say that it wasn't. I mean, if traveling across state lines, marking the bullets, creating a gun, stalking the individual, shooting him in the back is not acts of premeditation, I'm not exactly sure what is. Additionally, the judge said that he didn't think it met the standards for a terrorism charge. Now, the prosecution may appeal. Normally, the evidence has to be viewed in the light most favorable to the prosecution at this stage of the proceeding. And for the judge to make a legal ruling on what could potentially be a question of fact, it's a mixed question of law and fact. I think that if there's an appeal, it may get reversed. And we'll have to wait and see what happens on that. But think about it. Was it a terroristic act? Why is that not a question of fact for the jury to decide? I think the judge may have jumped the gun a little bit on this one. But hey, I get it. If you're Luigi and his attorneys and his supporters, soak it up. We'll see if it's a true victory or whether it rings to be hollow. Now, obviously, this case has drawn comparison to recent killings of, for example, Charlie Kirk of the Turning Point USA on September 10th. There in Utah, the alleged perpetrator, obviously Mr. Robinson, is accused of engraving messages on bullet casings similar to Mangione's case, prompting speculation about shared motivations. Now, both cases have sparked some polarizing public reactions, with some condemning the violence and others viewing it as a response to systemic grievances. Kind of goes to the terrorism charge that you were obviously going to harm other people, but you were kind of inspiring them to do other things, like, I don't know, engraving your bullets. Or some people will say, Luigi Mangione is not the same. I mean, he's just making a political statement. I get it. If I was representing Mangione, I would be making the same arguments. I really would. And the reality of it is, his attorneys are doing their job. And apparently today they did it pretty well. We'll see if it stands up. Anyway, Mangione was arrested in Altoona, Pennsylvania, days after the murder, where he also faces gun charges and is scheduled to appear in court in Pennsylvania on November 7th. And a notebook found in his possession reportedly described the killings as targeted, precise, and doesn't risk innocence, suggesting he viewed the act as a symbolic gesture. And needless to say, Mangione has denied all allegations, and obviously he's entitled to the presumption of innocence. Now, the dismissal of the terrorism charge in the state case marks a significant legal victory for Mangione, though the remaining state and federal charges ensure that his legal battles are far from over. Next, California judge is getting sentenced. Yes, you heard that correctly. A Southern California judge convicted of second-degree murder for the fatal shooting of his wife following a domestic dispute is set to face sentencing today. Orange County Superior Judge Jeffrey Ferguson, who's 74 years old, could receive up to 40 years to life in prison after a jury found him guilty back in April of 2025 for the murder with a felony gun enhancement. Now, prosecutors Prosecutors stated that Ferguson, a former criminal prosecutor, shot his wife Cheryl back in August of 2023 after an argument that began at a restaurant and continued at their Anaheim Hills residence while they were watching TV. Now, the altercation reportedly centered on family finances, and Ferguson, who had been drinking, retrieved a firearm from his ankle holster and fired the fatal shot. Ferguson, who had presided over the criminal cases until his arrest, maintained that the shooting was just, one big accident. Anyway, the case has significantly impacted the Orange County legal community, where Ferguson was a well-known figure, including the district attorney Todd Spitzer. And obviously, to avoid any conflict of interest, the Los Angeles Superior Court judge by the name of Eleanor Hunter oversaw the trial. Now, an initial trial back in March of 2025 failed to reach a verdict, which resulted in a mistrial. But a second jury convicted Ferguson the following month. Ferguson's attorney, Francis Prezia, has requested a new trial, arguing that the defense had insufficient time to prepare between the two trials and that a key witness was unavailable for the second trial, which obviously resulted in a disadvantage, and not only to her, but her client. Now, in the filing, the attorney contended that the court's refusal to grant a continuance was just unreasonable. During the trial, prosecutors described how Ferguson, after drinking, made a threatening gun gesture toward his wife at a restaurant. The argument continued at home, where Cheryl allegedly challenged him to point a real firearm at her. And he did, and it resulted in a fatal shot. Now, Ferguson, someone that's quite experienced with firearms, claimed he had accidentally discharged the gun while attempting to place it on a cluttered table due to a shoulder injury. Yes, it was an accident because that old football injury got in the way. You gotta love that stuff. I love coming up with that stuff. Now, following the incident, Ferguson and his son contacted the police, and Ferguson sent a text to his court clerk, bailiff, admitting to the shooting, stating he would be in custody. Police later discovered 47 weapons and 26,000 rounds of ammunition at his home, which obviously Mr. Ferguson will not be using anytime soon. Anyway, Ferguson began his legal career back in 1983 as a prosecutor specializing in narcotics cases, and became a judge in 2015, serving in Fullerton, approximately 10 miles from the Santa Ana courthouse, where he is scheduled for sentencing. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, it just shows you how quickly life can change, even for a 70-something-year-old judge who probably thought his life was pretty much, pretty good. Maybe other than arguing with the wife a little bit. But it just shows you how quickly it can change. And if you have firearms, you need to be safe with your firearms. As I tell clients all the time, I love firearms, but they complicate everything. And clearly, if they just had a verbal altercation, that would have been it. But yet, this judge took it one step further, ultimately resulting in the death of his wife, and now he's going to die in prison. Think, ladies and gentlemen, think before you do something stupid. And if you're drunk, you probably shouldn't be handling firearms, because remember, that's against the law. That's right. Barry Morphew has been released on bond pending his murder trial. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the case, Barry Morphew is charged with first-degree murder regarding the death of his wife, Suzanne Morphew, and he has secured his release from custody by posting $3 million in bonds. And that, my friends, is all it takes to get out of jail when you're charged with murder. $3 million worth of collateral. So for those who are not familiar with the case, Suzanne Morphew disappeared back in May of 2020 during a bike ride and did not return. That was Mother's Day, ladies and gentlemen. Her remains were discovered in 2023 in a shallow grave near Highway 17 in Saguache County, with an autopsy revealing the presence of a deer tranquilizer mixture in her system. That's right. And police noted that the prescription records indicate that Barry Morphew, as the sole local resident with access to this particular substance, they refer to it as called BAM. Initially charged back in 2021 regarding the death of his wife, the 11th Judicial District, evidence tampering and attempt to influence a public official. Now, those accusations were dismissed in 2022 following the determination of homicide in 2024, a grand jury in a different judicial district, the 12th Judicial District, indicted Barry Morphew in June of this year, obviously leading to his arrest. He was arrested in Arizona, going by Lee. Obviously, he's been in custody since then. So, in early September, at a status hearing, Morphew's legal team sought to reduce the $3 million bond, cash-only bond, to $500,000 bond. The chief judge, Amanda Hopkins, rejected the reduction, but adjusted the terms to allow cash, surety, or property options, effectively requiring Morphew to secure $300,000 for his release. The judge cited factors supporting the modification, including Morphew's lack of prior criminal history, family support from his daughters and mother, consistent compliance with the court's directive back in 2021, and he apparently is a low risk of flight or further offenses. Now, the counterbalancing concerns included his mobility and ability to relocate quite discreetly, though his prompt arrest in Arizona and the ongoing communications with his attorneys mitigated those particular risks. Now, by mid-September of 2025, supporters and friends funded the bond through a private agreement with a bondsman, as confirmed by the attorney, David Beller. Now, the exact amount raised remains undisclosed. Now, we talked about this quite extensively on a live program a couple of weeks ago. The process of obviously posting $3 million in cash. Property usually requires 1.5 times the value of the property, so $4.5 million. To post that, or surety, which means you go through a bail bondsman. You usually pay them a premium of about 10%, hence $300,000 on a $3 million bond. But the catch is you have to have $3 million in collateral, because if you do skip town, the bondsman's going to come hunt you down. However, if you don't and they can't find you, they take the collateral, sell it to pay the court for the bond. Be curious to see if we can get access to the bond paperwork once it is complete. Now, his release conditions. Upon release, Barry Morphew must wear a GPS ankle monitor for continuous tracking and is prohibited from leaving the state of Colorado. There is a protective order in place that bars contact with case victims, possession of a firearm or ammunition, and obviously he cannot consume any alcohol or controlled substances, though interaction with his daughters is permitted. The judge emphasized that the bond structure places $300,000 at risk, incentivizing compliance as a bondsman would pursue any attempted evasion by him. Now, Morphew's attorney, a guy by the name of David Beller, nice enough guy, asserted that substantial evidence supports Mr. Morphew's innocence and highlighted his client's adherence to legal obligations, including known whereabouts during his time in Arizona. Now, while the prosecution indicates a readiness for trial, the defense continues to review extensive discovery materials measured in terabytes. There is a status conference that is now set for November 3rd of 2025. Now remember, this time Barry Morphew was indicted, so therefore he is not entitled to a preliminary hearing. The defense can file a request for probable cause review where the grand jury transcripts would be turned over to the judge. The judge would determine if there is sufficient evidence for probable cause. So it's kind of like a judge-reviewed preliminary hearing, which would be unlikely to be thrown out in any event because a grand jury, more than 12 individuals, usually 15, determined that there was probable cause to exist to charge Barry Morphew with the death of his wife, Suzanne Morphew. Now, obviously, Barry Morphew is entitled to the presumption of innocence, and he will be given that certainly by us. All right, first on the docket, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let's give an overview. Unless you've been under a rock, you've probably heard about what took place on September 10th. Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old prominent activist and a founder of Turning Point USA, was fatally shot during a speaking engagement at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Now, the attack occurred when a single bullet struck Kirk in the neck, fired from a rooftop overlooking the event. He was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital shortly thereafter. Police recovered a high-powered bolt-action rifle, believed to be the weapon discarded in the wooded area and wrapped in a towel. Surveillance footage captured a suspect dressed in a T-shirt featuring an American flag, black shoes, sunglasses, and a black hat. The suspect, well, Tyler Robinson. He's 22 years old, and he's from St. George, Utah, and he was apprehended on September 12th following a brief manhunt. Like 33 hours to be exact. So Robinson is a resident of Washington County, has no prior criminal record, and was registered as being an unaffiliated voter. It also shows that he was an inactive voter, indicating that he did not participate in the 2024 presidential election. Now, he came from what is being described as a very conservative family. His father, Matt Robinson, operates a construction business specializing in kitchen installations, while his mother is a licensed social worker. Now, despite his family's political leanings, Robinson has apparently developed some contrasting views in the recent years. Now, academically, Robinson excelled in high school, achieving a 4.0 GPA, and got a 34 on the ACT, which earned him a full scholarship to Utah State University. However, he attended for only one semester in 2021 before withdrawing and enrolling in an electrical apprentice program at Dixie Technical College, where he was in his third year at the time of the incident. Now, a former classmate described him as unremarkable and socially engaged, particularly with the school's band and auto mechanics club. Now, one acquaintance characterized him as a Reddit kid, highlighting his immersion in online communities and suggesting excessive internet exposure may have influenced his actions. Now, Robinson was in a romantic relationship with his transgender roommate, a guy by the name of Lance Twigg, who is trying to transition from male to female. Now, apparently, Mr. Twiggs has cooperated fully with investigators, expressing shock upon learning of Robinson's involvement in providing access to relevant messages. Now, Robinson's arrest followed his confession to his father, who identified him from FBI-released surveillance images, and then he alerted police. When confronted, Robinson reportedly expressed a preference for suicide over surrender, prompting his father to involve a youth pastor who then contacted the United States Marshals. Now, Robinson is currently detained without bail in the Utah County Jail under special observation due to suicide concerns, and he faces initial charges of aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious injury, and obstruction of justice, with formal charges anticipated being filed tomorrow, September 16th. Now, officials in Utah, including the governor, Spencer Cox, and Attorney General Derek Brown, are considering a mix of state and federal prosecutions and have indicated their intent to pursue the death penalty if there is in fact a conviction. So, what do we got as far as evidence? Well, apparently some key evidence now includes DNA matches from a screwdriver found on the university rooftop and the towel encasing the rifle, both linking directly to Mr. Robinson. Now, there's text message exchanges with an associate, and that revealed Robinson's intent, stating he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk due to his disdain for Kirk's views. Now, a written note, since destroyed, apparently contained similar language as well. Now, there were some post-shooting communications between Twiggs and a friend referenced a note left by Robinson. Now, online messages also mentioned concealing a rifle in bushes near the site, and the rifle casings bore engravings reflecting internet memes, anti-fascist themes, and gaming references. Hey, fascist, catch, accompanied by directional arrows, possibly alluding to anti-Nazi symbolism, or video games like Helldivers 2. Then we got the Bella Ciao, invoking an Italian anti-fascist resistance song popularized in media such as Netflix Money Heist and the game Far Cry 6. There was also engraved on one of the casings, "If you read this, you are gay." LMAO, a crude internet acronym-laden phrase. Notice bulge, OWO, what's this? This is a meme often used to mock certain online subcultures. Particularly, it means dudes that are attracted to dudes that are thinking they're no longer going to be dudes, but they still get a bulge in their pants. Anyway, Robinson has refused to cooperate with law enforcement since he's been arrested, certainly his constitutional right to do so, and he is given the presumption of innocence. But obviously, anything he said to anyone, including his dad, guess what? Statement against interest, it is not hearsay. It comes in as an admission of a party opponent at trial. So like I said, he hasn't cooperated with police. That's his right to do so. He's got attorneys. They're going to advise him to keep his mouth shut because they're probably going to try to, save his life and save him from the death penalty. Anyway, the FBI director, Kash Patel, confirmed the DNA evidence and messages during an appearance on a news program earlier this morning. So why did he do it? Well, investigators are probing Robinson's shift in ideology, which diverged from his conservative upbringing after leaving the college. Now, Governor Cox attributed this immersion to deep, dark online spaces, including Reddit and gaming communities where radical ideas are proliferated. Now, Robinson reportedly discussed his dislike for Kirk during a family dinner prior to the event. And while no direct coordination via platforms like Discord occurred, although I think there may be more coming, post-incident messages aided the probe. Now, the governor emphasized the role of the internet memification in societal polarization, noting Robinson's transformation from a high-achieving student to someone capable of such an act of murder. Now, Governor Cox has publicly detailed the investigation, stressing cooperation from Robinson's circle despite the suspect's silence. And President Trump, a friend of Kirk, addressed the incident on September 14th, asserting that the individuals traditionally on the left are under major investigation. He attributed the attack to leftist rhetoric fostering hatred, contrasting it with right-wing issues, and echoed calls for the death penalty. Now, Trump plans to attend Kirk's memorial, which will take place next Sunday. Like I said, that memorial will take place September 21st at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. And this is organized by Turning Point USA. And the event aims to celebrate Kirk's life and legacy. And the stadium accommodates up to 73,000 people. Now, apparently there's going to be a private family service, but that has been kept quiet as to those details. Now, as of today, the investigation continues to refine evidence for forthcoming charges, and police have debunked unrelated rumors such as claims about Robinson's father working for law enforcement or a vanishing plane near the site. These cases underscore concerns over online radicalization and real-world impacts, obviously. So let's talk about potential charges. Now, police state there is no evidence as of this time of an accomplice. Now, there are lots of posts where people said something big is going to happen. Charlie Kirk is coming to my school. Things like that, where people posted it online. Something, oh, well, that's done immediately after Charlie Kirk was shot. So the police and FBI are going to be going through all of these types of communications, trying to figure out who is talking to whom and who assisted. Where did the rifle come from? Family rifle apparently was lent to him by somebody. So somebody may have had some advanced knowledge. And if they did, guess what? You could be found guilty under a complicity theory. That's right, because if you aid, assist, encourage somebody to commit an illegal act, you can be charged as a complicitor, just like you did it yourself. Anyway, initial detentions have yielded no links in the investigation, and interviewing family, friends, and the transgender roommate has not uncovered any co-conspirators as of yet. Now, speculation about the roommate stems from potential motives related to Kirk's view on gender identity, but this remains unverified. Now, if evidence emerges that others knew of the plan and failed to report it, obviously they could be charged under Utah law for obstruction of justice or accessory after the fact, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And I assure you, those applicable Utah statutes have probably been brought up once or twice when talking with somebody that may have information about the case, because the threat of imminent incarceration tends to break the bonds of loyalty.